Morning. Sorry I'm late.
Good morning. I was waiting to get in.
Oh,
Good morning.
morning, everyone. Guess it would help with glasses on. Sharita won't be in today.
Correct.
Guess everyone else is here. Need some glasses. Oh, man. Are we ready to begin? I gotta pull up these things. Hold on 1 minute.
You got enough people.
Hey, see, I get my glass.
It could be a pretty short meeting,
Yeah.
unless you really want a full hour meeting. We might be able.
Oh,
to
no.
It's Friday. It's Friday.
It's Friday, yeah.
It's Friday. It's
So
Friday.
Dr. Birch is voting for a 4-hour meeting. I'm hearing.
I'm voting for a 5-minute meeting.
Hey.
Would this have anything to?
I think I admire your approach to meetings. I mean,
That's the new way, Jonathan. That's the 2022 way.
Hey, Jonathan, you've never been in a meeting I've chaired. Even my lodges, they know I start on time. If you come in late, you might miss something. Even when I pastored, I tell folks, hey, I play the piano, I sing. If the choir's not in place, I'll take care of it. And then I'm going to preach. And so I'm good.
Jack of all trades.
especially church meetings. Church meetings tend to kind of drag on. So
No,
not yours,
from
but
Sunday
but
to Sunday,
general.
Jonathan. From Sunday to Sunday, all day on Sunday.
I did a funeral Saturday, and we started at 12 o'clock. And I kept sitting there and kept waiting for them to let me up. And I'm thinking, okay, you all are talking too much and you're not talking about anything. So they let me up at 12:55. I got up and I told them if I was going to preach, this was the scripture I was going to preach from. And I sung the song and called the mortician. 1 o'clock, I was taking my robe off.
Oh, wow. That was quick. Found glasses.
A 5-minute sermon.
Yep, I can do it. I mean, I generally preach 15 minutes anyway, so I just cut off 10 minutes.
I'm a big believer that less is more. And
It
in most occasions,
Yes.
less is more.
Well, I tell folks, once the Lord leaves, I generally have a tendency to follow him.
All right.
Hey,
Let's see how quickly we can get this done.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, we could get started. Ruby, can you put the agenda up, please?
I can do that. Give me a
College
moment.
pen. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Give me 1 moment to pull it up. I don't have it up in front of me, so hang on. Too many windows open all at the same time, but we can start with the approving minutes from our last meeting, Madam Chair, while I'm looking for this.
That's fine. Good morning, Helen, Ruby. I saw Bill Lloyd, Hanalea.
Good morning, everyone.
I'll drop the agenda in the chat. So it
Okay.
doesn't take up the whole screen. There you go.
Okay. So we on to approve the minutes right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Has everyone had a chance to go over the minutes?
Madam Chair, there are a couple of corrections. And Mr. Croom's name is misspelled twice. But other than that, I don't
That
have.
was the church service for today.
I have a problem with those O's and A's in Jonathan.
Oh,
I'm looking
my.
out for you, Jonathan.
I'm a little concerned that I didn't catch that, and it's my name. Let's see. Oh yeah, yeah. There's an extra H in my first name.
Yeah. In two places.
Look, he wants to see
Oh yeah,
who's on,
yeah,
who's
twice.
paying attention and who's not.
Jonathan.
Good job.
Jonathan, that was your new way of spelling your name.
Yeah, yeah.
Spell your name through the years, hasn't there?
Well, and the thing is, it's spelled right at the top.
Yeah.
You just come on loose at the bottom.
A little loose in two areas, but you know,
I will make a motion to approve the minutes with those two corrections.
I second that.
Okay. There you go. Mr. Curran, do you have that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much for those corrections, Ms. Allen. And we're gonna move on to number 4, the DCRC COC.
Sure. This is an issue that's kind of come up, and Jonathan's aware of it because it's in the performance management realm as we are going through evaluating our continuum of care projects. Durham Crisis Response Center, our intimate partner violence provider in the community, has a continuum of care rapid rehousing contract. And their first year of funds, their 2018 funds, were delayed in getting started. They then asked for an extension. Typically with your COC grants, you have a 12-month period to expend the funds. They ask for an extension of 3 or 4 months to fully spend the contract for their first year. They did not fully spend the contract. There was about $25,000, $30,000 left unspent of money. They have yet to complete their required HUD annual progress report because they don't have an HMIS equivalent database to do the report. They have been working with HUD and have an extension to do that and do a manual one. We're in the process of evaluating their first and their second year of progress on this. And we have zero data to show that they've done anything. And what we have been hearing and seeing is that people have been enrolled in this project, in a rapid rehousing project, since June or July of last year, and people are not moving into permanent housing. So we're kind of looking at this, that this project is not anywhere near where it needs to be. The infrastructure to report on it is not where it needs to be. And the performance is severely lagging from what we're seeing at this point. And the homeless team was talking about, sort of what our options would be. And we are reaching out to DCRC because Jasmine Young Bradshaw, who is the interim executive director, recently resigned. So they are now without an executive director. The president of the board is stepping in to try and cover while they figure out their next steps. So I've talked to the president of the board and expressed our concerns. We do have a meeting set up with them, or we're trying to get a meeting set up with them next week. But one of the key people from DCRC who needs to be in that meeting was out of town last week. And our hope is we can have a conversation with them and talk about what the options are. At this point, DCRC may elect to say, you know what, this doesn't fit us. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the ability to do it, and say, take the grant and put it up for reallocation in the 2022 HUD NOFO competition, which will be probably later this late summer, fall, whenever the HUD timeline gets around to, which is, shot in the dark at this point. The other option is if DCRC says, no, we want to keep it, we may need to make some recommendations that we forcibly reallocate it by saying, as a lead agency, we're not going to let this continue because there's no data, there's no performance, and we're going to have to take it away from you regardless, which is within the rights of the lead agency and within the rights of the performance management committee to make that recommendation. And the HSAC would have to vote for an involuntary reallocation of funds. Hopefully it doesn't go that way because it's, embarrassing for folks. But we wanted to bring it to the executive committee's attention as we'll be looking at doing pre-application work in the April-May timeframe. And if we want to talk about a reallocation of these funds, we would want to make sure that people understand that these funds will be up for reallocation. And there's plenty of time for people to plan on how they might go about using those funds, either expanding a permanent supportive housing project, creating a new permanent supportive housing project, expanding a rapid rehousing project, creating a new rapid rehousing project, or something along those lines. So wanted just to kind of put that on the radar that we may need to address this. Probably won't be ready for March, but it is possible that if they voluntarily want to give up the funds and we get that information before the March HSAC meeting, we may want to just kind of put it on there as an informational piece for the HSAC and allow folks to start planning for it.
So what if they don't appease to this? What if they don't want to give it back?
Well, if they don't want to give it back, that's where we can tell them, at this point, you don't have a say in the matter. You're out of compliance with the HUD regulations. And part of our job on the city side is the lead agency, is to make sure that agencies are performing. And then part of the responsibility of the HSAC is to step in and reallocate funds from underperforming agencies. So if they say, we don't want to do it, we don't want to give it up, and HSAC says, we don't want to take it away, then HUD's going to look at us. And when HUD looks at us as a continuum, they're going to be like, you got this really underperforming organization for 2 years. There's no reports, there's no money moving, there's draws. Why are you not doing anything to fix it? And that may impact our overall score as a community in HUD and lower our score because you're not reallocating poor performing projects and you're not showing improvement in the poor performing project. When you start losing points, that impacts your ability to score high enough to potentially receive bonus project money. So there's a real incentive for us to make sure that we take the appropriate steps to move money away from low performing organizations if they're unable to demonstrate progress in improving their overall performance.
So we need to step in and present the violations to the board, the committee, so they can take a vote on it. And then we proceed with the procedures on that, or?
Perhaps it'll depend. And that's why we're flagging it, is we may need to do what you're suggesting, Angel. If they choose not to voluntarily give it up, we would have to take it to performance management. Performance management would probably make the recommendation to the full HSAC, and the full HSAC would have to take a vote to reallocate the funds.
So they can give it up and then reapply, right?
They could. It doesn't mean that they would get it, but yes, you
Yeah. Well, with the poor performance, I doubt it if they,
yeah. But yes, I've seen
understanding of the procedures, the steps,
Mhm.
you know,
Remind me how
if
much
it's-
this project is, we're talking about overall in terms of funding that would be on the table?
Yeah, I just looked that up. They were awarded renewal funding in the 2020 competition for $167,147. So that would be the
Okay.
amount that they would be eligible to apply for in 2022, or would be available for reallocation.
Okay.
They do have the 2022 award will provide them funding through July of 2023, when the 2022 grant, if it were awarded, would start.
And this is to house their population and get them into permanent housing. Is that, am I understanding that?
It's a rapid rehousing project that has the target population of using the funds to provide rapid rehousing primarily to survivors of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, correct? And I think their initial application proposed serving about 8 to 10 households per year, or 8 to 10 households at any one time. Depending on how long people need the financial support, they could potentially serve maybe 16 to 20, 25 households per year, again, depending how much turnover there is.
We don't know their performance because they have no data that they're reporting on. Is that, am I hearing that right?
Correct.
If we don't know that they're not doing the rapid rehousing, we just don't have any data to support
Hey.
whether they're doing it or not.
Well, I don't know if Hanalea wants to chime in. Hanalea has been reporting to us that there are some people that she's aware of that have been enrolled in the project, according to Hanalea's understandings, that, as Colin mentioned, have been enrolled in the project since last summer, but are still not in a permanent rapid rehousing project. And a concern there is that while housing search and housing location services can be provided for some time, specific case management can only be provided for rapid rehousing participants for 1 month.
Yeah, so I can share. So yeah, so early in the project, they had, I believe, maybe 2 or 3 households that did actually get housed. Since that time, to my knowledge, based on my work with the by name list process, no one has been housed through the project. They currently have 4 households enrolled in the project. All with enrollment dates, some of them in the June-July timeframe of 2021, and some of them more recent in the December-January timeframe. No one since that June-July timeframe that has been enrolled in the project has been housed. You know, there was a long period of time where it appeared the clients were just not receiving any services. And more recently, the clients are receiving services, but they're not rapid rehousing services. They're more consistent with like a shelter case management model. Yeah, no one has been housed in the project since July 2021, or June 2021, I should say.
It sounds like too that they're having some personnel or staffing issues. So that's probably my guess to apparently what's behind all of this. There's some inconsistency in understanding what needs to be done and who's supposed to do what. And so things are big balls are getting dropped all the time, apparently.
Right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the HUD in 2018 for the first time specifically designated $50 million of the COC competition for what they called a domestic violence bonus. We reached out to DCRC at that time to see if they were interested. The interim director in that period applied, and they obviously received the award. A new permanent director came on in early 2019, I think in January, February 2019, worked to get the project operational. The interim executive director who had submitted the grant left the employment of the organization. So there's been frequent staff transitions. The permanent director that was in place left in early 2021, and Jasmine Young Bradshaw, as Colin mentioned, became an interim executive director, and she left in early February of this year. So there's been significant staff transitions. They did have a case manager working to implement the project, I think in the 2020 through early 2021 period. He left for other employment. So there's been some frequent staff transitions. I mean, the organization did have some stable organizational leadership from, I would say, probably about 2006 till about 2017 or 2017, I think, when the previous executive director left. But the last several years, they've had some real staffing leadership changes going on.
I
I'm sorry.
had a question for Leah, back to where it said last year that they didn't have too many families placed. Was that due to the moratorium by any chance? Did that have anything to do with that? Because with the moratorium.
No, it had nothing to do with that. The issue with them initially was that they had staff that were not really doing what they were supposed to be doing. And more recently, like I said, the issue has been that they do have staff who are actively working and engaging, but do not really seem to understand the dynamics of a rapid rehousing project, and are doing more trying to get people into public housing, which is a much longer process than we would expect a rapid rehousing project to use. So no, it was not related to the moratorium. It was related to staffing and understanding of rapid rehousing issues.
Okay.
We as Ruby and I met with Jasmine and their team in December to specifically give training on rapid rehousing. What does it mean? What does it look like? How do you do it? How do you talk to landlords? How do you sell the service to landlords? How do you do the rent verifications? We gave them I think we spent, Ruby, 2 or 3 hours on a Zoom call walking through everything and making sure they had things. So I would have expected that between middle of December and now, we would see some movement. Even if you didn't know it beforehand, within 3 months, 2 to 3 months, you would at least see 1 or 2 people moving into housing in that time period. Granted, it's a tough housing market, but it can be done. We've got others who are able to do it.
Looks like they didn't understand the assignment.
That sometimes happens. Agencies will apply for funds. It sounds good, and then they get the money and don't realize that they may not have the expertise or the skill sets to be able to pull it off. And then if they've spent the money on ineligible expenses, if HUD comes to monitor them, they may have to pay money back to HUD. So part of our responsibility is also to make sure that they don't end up digging themselves into a bigger hole than they may already be in.
And I'm wondering if there's a deeper problem here that we can't see, that they're having so much trouble keeping a good leadership.
Yeah.
There might be other situations going. My other question was going to be, and judging by what Hanalea said, that there's only been 4 persons even housed. It says what's June, I think you said, something like that. My other question was going to be the impact of them losing this money. How would it affect that if they're not even using it? Really, it's not going to have that much of an impact for them to lose it.
So to clarify, Helen, no one has been housed since June of 2024. People have been enrolled in the project since that time.
Okay, gotcha.
And you know, the flip side of this for the COC is it's very problematic because we don't have a process as a COC for kind of forcibly pulling clients out of underperforming projects to put them in other projects. So it's been extremely unfortunate for both the shelter providers that are being evaluated on the length of time that clients stay in their projects, and for the clients themselves who are missing out on other housing opportunities as they sit in a project that is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. As far as the impact, yes, I tend to agree with you. You know, this project has not housed people experiencing intimate partner violence. So I do not think it would have an impact on that population. You know, we as a COC have already decided to prioritize people experiencing intimate partner violence as a priority 1 group for rapid rehousing slots. So I would say since this project was implemented, generally, people experiencing intimate partner violence just generally have more access to rapid rehousing than they did previously. And I still feel that the population will be fully served if this project goes away. I think, and there are other more pressing needs in the community of what we could do with this money, particularly around permanent supportive housing.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I have a question for Hanalea. What is going to be the impact on the COC or the HSAC? Because if the terms of the grant are not satisfied or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I think if I didn't mishear, Collins state that even the reporting process is off kilter. How does that affect us with HUD?
So I would actually defer that question to Lloyd and Colin, who are more familiar with that piece of the puzzle.
You want to go ahead, Lloyd, or you want me to take it?
I'll chime in and you can add to it perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah, HUD does evaluate COCs on how well we are working with low performing projects to improve performance. It also does look at whether the COC is reallocating funds from low performing projects to high performing projects. We had voluntarily reallocated transitional housing funds in the 2013 to 2016, 2017 period. And that stood us in good stead for a number of years. But in the 2021 competition, HUD reduced essentially the look back period to say, no, what did you do to reallocate in that period I referenced as to what have we done to reallocate from low performing projects in 2018 to the present. And so we didn't do well on that. And so I think there is some concern that I would have that we seriously look at reallocating a low performing project. And part of the challenge with this project is that, again, without an HMIS comparable database, it's very difficult to even get clear information as to whether how the project is performing. What we have is the largely anecdotal evidence that Hanalea has shared with us about her experience with the project through the last several years, last 6 to 10 months with the by name list processes.
So no one's been enrolled since June or July. How many people have been, or families have been housed that we anecdotally?
Okay, so I think we need to clarify again, Jonathan. 4 households have been enrolled in the project since June or July.
Okay.
Enrolled means actively in housing search. They have not been housed.
Okay.
To my knowledge, and based on my memory of early times for this project, 2 households were housed early in the project. To my knowledge, that is the total of who has been housed through this project. And then there are 4 households that have been enrolled since that time and have not been housed.
Okay. Sorry, I just.
No, it's fine. I
Thank
think
you,
everyone
Claire.
got the language, so I just want to make sure everyone really understands what we're saying. Which is that households are enrolled, but not housed. And like I said, that is actually in some ways more problematic, because that means for those households, they can't get other services because they're enrolled in this project that is stalled out with their housing process.
It sounds to me, just my opinion here, and this is from what I'm hearing from what Colin said and what Lloyd and Hanalea said, you're already thinking along these lines anyway, that we should invite them to give up the funds until they get their house in order, so to speak. But I mean, obviously a tactful, diplomatic way. And by giving up the funds voluntarily, it may be possible for them in the future to reapply. It won't look so bad as if it gets taken away forcibly.
You are absolutely correct, Helen. And that's our hope, is that we get there. We just wanted to flag it to the executive committee that we are needing to have these conversations with DCRC. And our hope is to do exactly what you just articulated, that they realize this is probably not a good fit for us at this point, and we will gladly give it up. And we can just make that announcement in the March HSAC meeting that we're going to have a reallocation in this year's NOFO. Should they choose not to do it, then we need to make sure it's on the April agenda for an involuntary funding piece. But I'm hoping to have a conversation with the president of the board again prior to us meeting sometime next week to sort of kind of lay it out between the two of us so that she can think it through. Having talked to her before, she seems to understand it. She does a lot of grant writing in her full-time job. So she understands the compliance piece. She understands when you're in trouble and seems to understand the repercussions. I'm not sure that we've done enough, or she's gotten into the weeds enough to recognize how bad things could possibly be. And like I said, it's hard for us to know how bad things really are because we don't have access to their database. We haven't been on site to look at client files for people who are in this, and we haven't looked at their financials to see how bad this truly could be. But given what we're seeing, it could be a major issue if HUD were to come monitor their program.
So Colin, have they been warned previously, before getting to this point where they are now?
We have talked to Jasmine about it, about our concerns. And that's how we ended up arriving at doing the technical assistance, the training that we did in December.
Right.
We'd been offering it for quite some time, and it just took a while to get their schedules to line up for us to be able to do.
That was given help. They've been warned that they can lose if not, get their things together, that they haven't been in compliance. So common sense would tell them, you don't use or do what you're supposed to do, you're going to lose it. And if it's written out there to them that if you voluntarily give it up, you'll have chance to reapply, give you enough chance to get yourself together so you won't come back with the same that you had before.
Madam Chair.
Your conversation with her, she can maybe see that, We don't have to forcefully take it from them. I'm sorry, Dr. Birch.
No, ma'am, I'm fine. I was just gonna say, I'm leaning toward what Helen stated earlier. It sounds like there's some problems that that's going on there as far with them, and it's been my experience when you get to those positions and those problems, it becomes a board issue. Maybe the board isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, so consequently, you're not going to have the service that you need. My concern, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, Lloyd, Colin, it's gonna, if it keeps on going the way it's going, it's going to inadvertently, adversely affect their clients. And then at some point down the road, it may affect us. And when I say us, I'm talking about the HSAC or the COC, because and in that case, it affects the more customers or more clients that are not, what's the word I want to use? You know, that's with them, but it just has a running effect that makes all look bad. So it has to be handled now sooner than rather than later.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. Great point. You and
Yeah.
Helen. Yes.
One more point of clarity that I would offer is that the project has funding from the 2019 and the 2020 competitions, and those funds will allow the project to continue functioning until July 31st of 2023. So the funding that we're talking about reallocating in 2022, potentially with or without their agreement, would be for projects that would start operating in calendar year 2023 into 2024. So if the decision to reallocate is postponed to next year's competition, the project would continue to have funding into calendar year 2023. So 2024, excuse me. So just takes about that amount of time for a project to wind down. And so there, if a reallocation decision were made this year, we would have time to work with the organization to transition existing clients and hopefully, spend out as much of the funds that were awarded in 2019 and 2020 prior to the end of those grant years.
Okay.
It sounds like to me an invitation to surrender the funds is probably maybe the most generous way to approach this. And
Yeah.
and I'd like to, I think we should do it in a way that does not either shame or cast doubt on the legitimacy of the organization. I mean, obviously they have some internal issues, but we don't want to do anything to discourage them from being a continued faithful COC partner who does everything they can to house people.
And we got to think of the clients as well. We have to think of the clients.
I don't like seeing money left on the table.
Nobody does.
It's
Much money.
hard to get these funds to begin with, right? And every dollar counts when we're talking about people living on the edge or homeless.
Exactly.
All right, so we got a plan for DCRC. I guess we can move on, and we got about 20 minutes to figure out our March agenda.
Okay.
And
Okay.
don't have a whole lot.
That's okay. I have a lot.
Good. We
So-
will defer to Mr. Crooms. What would you like to put on the March agenda?
Okay, so I would love to present the benchmarks, updates to the benchmarks that the Performance Management Committee has passed. Originally, I was going to do that during our last meeting, but to really, I needed more time to kind of prepare that. So, I will be ready to do that for this meeting. And then we have just finished up the scoring. So for the spring competition. So I would also like to present that as well.
How many minutes you gonna need?
A lot,
Okay.
I think. I think. Well, I mean, it really depends on the questions we get.
Do you want to do like 20 minutes for each? 30 minutes?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would expect that we'll get questions on the benchmarks, and we usually get questions on the scoring and around probably, how did, particularly with scoring around, what are the areas that we're doing well in, what are we not doing well in? So I think definitely that sounds pretty reasonable.
30 and 30.
20 each, I think sounds good.
Okay.
20 and 20, you said, or 30 and 30?
Yeah. 20 and 20. And then I'm also happy to, as being performance chair, to present a little bit on the DCRC question. Obviously, you all as lead agency staff are more intimately acquainted with the details. So, I'm happy to present that, or if you feel like that needs to be presented by you all as staff, happy to do that too, whatever.
Okay.
I just need to be equipped with the most update information if you have a conversation next week.
All right. JC or. All right, I'll just make that a note there we'll put it on because I think the DCRC fits best with the scoring
Yeah.
piece. And then we then after we get more information from them, hopefully next week, we can reach out to you, Jonathan, and figure out who's best to deliver the message depending on what the message is.
Yeah. And it's a delicate matter. So if it's not supposed to be me, or if it's not appropriate for me, that's fine. Not offended in any way.
Sure. Let's see what happens next week. And what kind of conversations we can have. All right. These legal aid and DHA. I was kind of thinking it through and wondering if we maybe want to move those to our full HSAC meeting in May, especially since legal aid just closed their stuff about 30 days ago. I suspect they're still working through applications.
Yeah.
And it probably would be a better use to have DHA and legal aid present at a full HSAC meeting.
So you're thinking about in May?
Thinking about it.
I think that's a great idea. I think legal aid, anytime they do a presentation, I feel like, people are particularly engaged by that. And, since it is full COC, I think, that really just opens up the door for more participation. And, those projects may have, or just general COC members may have some questions for legal aid. So I think it's a great idea.
All right. So any other items that we need to, and then we need a vote, Jonathan, on the benchmarks for HSAC to approve these?
Yeah, so from what we understand, there's nothing explicit that says that it has to be voted on, but it feels appropriate to ask for a vote as a, and to have the full body agree, because these are essentially the benchmarks that have been in place since 2014. And, so yes, a vote to approve would be good. I guess it probably depends the feedback that we get, whether folks are comfortable with it or if they want time to spend with it. But yeah, a vote would be the goal.
And we don't need a vote on the scores. That's informational. Because it's not being recommended for funding. Okay.
Correct.
Another agenda item that I would suggest is a review of performance on our on HUD system performance measures. Our HMIS lead agency worked with us to submit our system performance measures for the federal fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021. And I've developed some 6 and 7 year historical overviews of how we've been performing on those, 6 of the 7 system performance measures that HUD is currently measuring us on. So I'd be happy to present that. Probably again, 20 minutes for a presentation and maybe 10 for discussion. It's a series of charts that I've developed.
All right. Does that sound good to committee? See a thumbs up from Jonathan. I see a Helen nodding.
Works for me.
I hear Dr. Birch. All right, it's in there. So we are now at an hour and 10 hour and 15. Anything else we need to put in there, or do we want to leave it at this? It's a pretty full agenda, and some of these could.
Leave it because there's going to be some questions. So of course that's going to make it extend.
Yep. All right, so it looks like we got an agenda.
Dr. Birch, did you say it was gonna be some questions from the HSAC board? You
I
talking
think
about
so.
the board that was crickets last month?
Well, you know, I think they were crickets last month because they were tired. But you know, the spring is coming.
Yeah.
Okay,
New birth and regrowth here.
that one. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to a full meeting and get this done. Get people housed, money where it needs to be, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right.
One question, since I have, most of the community development staff here on, I'm trying to do actually a bit of a PowerPoint for the presentation on the benchmarks, and was wondering if it might be possible to use, I don't know what you want to call it, the COC kind of, what do you call it? The format that you guys use a lot of times in presenting.
Yeah, the template.
Obviously, it's city formatting. So if that's okay, I just think it looks really nice, and I think it as opposed to having something generic that I come up with off of PowerPoint.
Yeah, I can work with you on that, Jonathan.
Terrific.
Well, Madam Chair, I think we may have accomplished our agenda.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
It's all right. I think we may have accomplished our agenda.
All right, sounds great. Is anyone else have anything to add that might help?
I'd invite the committee, perhaps in preparation for our April and spring meetings, to be thinking about whether this committee, as well as the larger HSAC, wants to continue to operate in the virtual environment, or if there's going to be potential to move towards in-person meetings again, depending again, obviously, with what happens with the pandemic. I know the city and county have relaxed the mask mandate effective March 7th, and city employees are being freed from the masking requirement as of March 21st. So it's not anything that the committee needs to necessarily talk about today, but perhaps moving forward again, depending on what happens with the pandemic over the next weeks and months.
And finding space.
Yeah.
Maybe, we need a bigger space, maybe a May in-person meeting.
Wait, the committee already voted to suspend in-person meetings until next year.
Oh, great.
And I don't know if you all want to revisit that come May or June, but we did have difficulty finding actual physical space that would hold the amount of people that usually attend HSAC meetings.
That's right. I think they're still using the rooms that we would have done for, inoculations and all that stuff. I would also I'm just going to throw this out there. Certainly it wasn't that far in the past when, in having our in-person meeting, we had some kind of unhealthy power dynamics that popped up. And I don't know if you all have noticed this, but there is something about a virtual meeting that in many ways feels a lot more egalitarian and collegial. And I think obviously, it's more fun, to be in person, but there's something about that to me that seems worth preserving. because I haven't seen those dynamics, you know, in the way that they used to be. And I have to wonder if, you know, the virtual meeting has something to do with that. I mean, we're all on our own little piece of screen here. You know, there's no favored place at a table, or, you know, there's not, you know, a separate gallery. We're all just here. And I wonder if that has maybe helped some too.
Help me.
There's the logistical considerations of most of these meetings are downtown and parking is bad. I know that we were having them in the conference room, as you said, that's not available at the HHS building, but they're also going to be tearing up that parking lot soon. That's not going to be available for anyone. Admin 2 would be an option because there are meeting rooms on the 4th floor, but then parking is going to be terrible there.
Yeah.
And then there's the other part of having to spend 20 to 30 minutes to get to the meeting, 20 to 30 minutes to get back from a meeting. And that's 45 minutes. I could be doing something else. No offense, guys, but
No. I mean, this is a very efficient way of doing things.
Yeah.
And
why
it's,
do we have to wait for a pandemic to start doing this?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you got to start searching for parking, and then like you got stairs, or you got to wait for the elevator. I mean, it adds up. It definitely adds up. So I'm with you, Helen.
It's definitely true that our attendance has been much better since we went virtual, and I think that transportation time has been a big piece of that.
Yeah, it's been almost, you know, 98% attendance.
Thanks for the reminder, Ruby.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want you to know, like, we've been trying to find spaces. Even Reginald got involved in the conversation about what spaces might be available across the city and the county. And to be honest with you, it's a logistical nightmare, not including just the fact that the parking lot is going to be gone soon, plus the vaccination clinic. So I don't know. I can't find anything. I do remember that the HSAC did vote to hold off on in-person meetings, at least until the end of this fiscal year for the committee, and that they would possibly revisit it during the summer. That was the vote that was had. And if you all want to bring that up either in May or June or August of next year, that's something that can be done.
And of course we do, and I think part of that conversation, of course, was about some of our folks do have some, you know, fragile health. And of course, that's always, you know, number one.
All right.
Sounds great.
If there's nothing else, Madam Chair, you may be able to add, oh, Helen's got something, unless
No, I
Helen's
think
making a motion.
During the meeting.
Go ahead. May I get a second?
Wait. We need to
Second
have
and
Dr.
third.
Birch. Dr. Birch is the epic.
Dr. Birch,
winner
I'm
of
waiting.
meetings. Yeah, so
Second
we
and
gotta
third.
have Dr. Birch make a motion too.
It's on you, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Got a second and a third.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Enjoy the weekend and the day.
Take care. Great to
Thank
see
you
you.
all. Be safe. See you soon.
Safe
Bye-bye.
weekend. Still masked up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk to you soon. Bye all.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.